I'm a 90-year-old long-retired GP. My daughter's second husband, Jim Hawkins, is a wizard with everything to do with recording and the creation of videos, and it was his idea that I should record my musings on our family photos before the Grim Reaper catches up with me. So here goes. This is Granny Buckland, a formidably capable lady whose husband died of alcoholism at the early age of 40. She was left to bring up 5 children long before the days of our modern social security. There were 4 girls and my father, Harry George. My paternal grandmother, for example, coped with 5 children unsupported. At one stage, she took in washing to put food on the table. No welfare state in the years before the First World War. The girls all went into service, and father, aged 14, became an office boy at James Buchanan & Co., whiskies distillers in Holborn, London. He stayed for 50 years and ended up as managing director. What an achievement for a lad with only minimal schooling. It was there that he met my mother, Louie. She was a typist at Buchanan's. In the Great War, father joined the West Kent Yeomanry, an artillery regiment using horses to pull their guns, hence his lifelong love for the animals. He was wounded by shrapnel on Easter Monday 1917. His left hip was severely damaged and the leg shortened. He never complained and would tell us children that his hip always knew when rain was on the way. For the rest of his life he wore surgical boots and used a stick until he died at the age of 76. No antibiotics or hip replacements in those days. He was as straight as a die, eternally cheerful and with a great sense of humour, particularly liking the crazy gang slapstick. Mother and father married in 1920 and had 3 children. I was born on the 7th of January 1924 in Bromley, Kent, the middle one of 3 children, 2 of them sisters, both of whom would probably claim that this resulted in me being spoiled. I'm the chubby one on the right, christened Harry Mitchell, but nicknamed Bully, a corruption of brother coined by my older sister Sheila, because at the age of 3 she could not manage the word brother. Here we are again rather later in life. Probably because of his own limited schooling, father valued education above all else he could give his children, and by sheer hard work paid for all 3 of us to be educated privately. I passed the entrance exam for Dulwich College. Dulwich was the epitome of an old-fashioned public school. Here I am as a prefect. You can tell it is summer because we only wore these boaters in the summer term. The hat band shows that I had been awarded a first 11 colour. Such elitism is currently anathema to the PC Brigade. I stayed until the age of 18. Initially I studied classics, moving to science after matriculation, this with a view to becoming a doctor. School life more or less revolved around sport, and I played cricket, rugby, squash and pretty much anything else on offer, with no more than modest success. I did, however, get to keep wicket and open the batting in an unbeaten first 11, which included Trevor Bailey, later of England fame. Father thought I too could have played for England. He was wrong, but his encouragement did me no harm. In the summer term of 1942, I volunteered to join the army, pretty much on an impulse, when a recruiting officer turned up at school with a tank. I think father, himself a First World volunteer, would have understood. So in the autumn I went down to the Royal Armoured Corps training camp near Bovington. 3 months hard work where they taught me to drive, fire guns and work wirelesses. Basic training consisting largely of drill and the indoctrination of unquestioning obedience to orders, the most essential element in the creation of an effective fighting force. There is an element of truth in the old rule, If it moves, salute it. If it doesn't, paint it. The system has managed against considerable odds to win 2 world wars. If you want to learn to drive properly, join the army. I was taught on everything from a motorbike to a 38-ton Churchill tank, perhaps the best being a Jeep, a wonderful American go-anywhere 4-wheel drive runabout from which all modern 4x4s are descended. They seemed to think I was officer material and sent me on to Sandhurst, from where I was commissioned in 1943. After the passing out parade, I became Second Lieutenant Harry Buckland. I was nearly 20. I joined the Inns of Court Regiment, a reconnaissance unit equipped with armoured cars. It was now the end of 1943 and early 1944. We spent 2 weeks on a sealing course round a Scottish loch, which hopefully would allow us to drive off a landing craft into 4 feet of water without the engine stalling. Without a word of a lie, it rained continuously for the whole 2 weeks, and I wondered how on earth the Scots could live in such a place. I never got to find out whether the sealing worked, because being surplus to establishment, was seconded to Corps Headquarters as a liaison officer. This consisted mainly of driving between Cobham in Surrey and the Portsmouth area, delivering top-secret D-Day plans to various units. For some reason I was made aware of these plans, including the location of all the beaches, and was scared stiff I might talk in my sleep. I rejoined D Squadron of the Inns of Court Regiment about 2 weeks after D-Day around Caen in Normandy. We were not much involved in the battle until the run-up through France, Belgium, Holland and Germany in some glorious autumn and bitterly cold winter weather. Each squadron, there were 4, was organised into 5 troops consisting of 2 Daimler armoured cars and 2 scout cars. The larger cars had a 2-pounder gun mounted on a turret. An unimpressive pea shooter, quite useless against any other armoured vehicle we might encounter. Worse still, this little gun was mounted even in Churchill tanks, which were pitted against the 88mm gun used by the Germans. Not until the end of 1943 did the RAC have the 17-pounder, which was nearly as good as the 88. Why we did not simply copy the German gun remains a mystery. Could it be that the MOD felt it was not entirely sporting? My scariest moment came when we were sent across an area of boggy land to liaise with the Americans. Our cars got stuck and we decided to walk. We came across 4 dead Dutch civilians, each with a foot blown off by an anti-personnel mine. We retraced our footsteps very carefully. We ended up on VE Day in a place called Nebel, just south of the German border with Denmark. This was where we learned to ride on 15 horses borrowed from a German riding academy near Hamburg. 3 months of delightful idleness, and I've often wondered what became of the horses when we left. After VE Day, I was sent back to England with a view to transfer to somewhere in the Far East. The atom bombs had yet to be dropped on Japan, but thanks to the efforts of Father and Sheila, was released early to go to Cambridge in 1946 to study medicine. I qualified in 1953 and did 3 6-month house jobs at Dulwich Hospital, one of the hospitals in the King's College Hospital group. My last job was in medicine, and it was there I met Jean, the ward sister. In the post-war austerity years, Father was in charge of the home trade, allocating scarce supplies of high-class whisky to the London restaurants, where he was always well received. At the time I was at King's College Hospital, and he would buy me an expense account lunch at upmarket eateries such as Simpson's in the Strand, the Dorchester and others. A particular favourite of mine was Frascati's in High Holborn. I can see him now eating cold, hard-boiled gull's eggs with brown bread and butter, washed down with a mouthful of a very respectable hock, followed by another gull's egg, more brown bread and another mouthful of hock. They're a delicate shade of pink and taste of the sea, and if you haven't tried them, you haven't lived. So he and I ate well during the week. Unfortunately, Mother, although a great pastry cook, she made a delicious Dundee cake and great mince pies, was hopeless with vegetables. Her idea of cooking cabbage or sprouts was to boil them soggy and then squash out the water in a colander. It caused a certain amount of parental friction, as did the issue of central heating. Fathers provided, mothers cared. A system I suggest suited to the entire animal kingdom, including our self-styled Homo sapiens. Could it be that we are rather less sapiens than we claim? Both my parents were regular church-goers, and they took us with them without fail on Sundays. We said grace before meals, and when finished, each of us would gabble, "Thank God for my good dinner, please can I get down?" Family meals were compulsory, enjoyable and educational. Christmas dinner was a real occasion, usually with one or more aunts and uncles. Father always brought home a large turkey on Christmas Eve, purchased in Smithfield Market, together with a whole ham, usually a Stilton, and a big basket of fruit nestling in olive leaves. Of course we had Christmas pudding and mince pies, and were eating the leftovers for days afterwards. We had stockings and presents, and swallowed the Father Christmas story until disillusioned by older children. I firmly believe in a little magic in early life. Back to the spring of 1955. I took up a 6-month stint at Dulwich Hospital as medical houseman to a lovely man, Clifford Hoyle, whose main interest was tuberculosis. Much more important, his ward sister was one Jean Dawson, a Grimsby girl who from day one made my life worth living. I asked her out, something I would never have ventured to do had I known she was already semi-engaged to another doctor. Off we went to a cricket match at the Oval, and I was greatly impressed with her grasp of the game. From then on we had a lovely summer, helped by my father's generosity in lending us his car. I proposed and was accepted. Amazingly, our courtship remained a secret from the hospital grapevine. Walking down the corridor after my last ward round, Clifford Hoyle commented that I was leaving. "Yes," said I, "and it gets worse. I'm going to marry your ward sister." "You sly dog," said he. We were married at St Giles Church, Scartho, on the 10th of December 1955. And 52 years later, I regularly recall the wonderful smile Jean bestowed on me as she walked up the aisle. Is it any wonder that I asked her to marry me? This picture was taken on the day I proposed, and from then on my life changed. Isn't she beautiful? For the next 52 years we never had a cross word. Our love-making was unfailingly joyous, not least because all was followed by a long cuddle in which I ran my fingers through her hair. This explains my fondness for the Scottish ballad Jeanie with the Light Brown Hair. No account of her life would be complete without something about her love of dogs. Jean had been picking up strays since the age of 7, and on one occasion the dog went into labour on Christmas morning when we had 17 guests for lunch. Jean delivered 6 puppies and lunch on time. What a woman. Without doubt, the most intelligent, lively and rewarding dog we had was Lucy, a King Charles Spaniel. Despite a serious heart defect, she chased rabbits and pheasants with gusto. Sadly, she died aged 9 when her heart gave out. Her ashes and those of Jean are scattered on our favourite beach looking out on Phaedra Lighthouse on the Firth of Forth. We had 2 children of our own, Patricia, born 1957, David, born 1958, and supplemented by Sue, who we adopted at the age of 6 weeks. David did not thrive, and after some persistence, we persuaded our paediatric consultants that he had cystic fibrosis. I had seen a case during my spell as a house officer. There followed 20 years of medication, physiotherapy and hospital admissions until his death from chronic lung disease at the age of 20. David was a very good sailor, although handicapped by his lung disease. He did the helming with me or Trisha as crew. This photo shows how good a sailor he was. The boat is plumb upright and both children are using their weight to maximum effect. Trisha is now 57. Her first marriage ended in divorce after 22 years. In June 2007, she married Jim Hawkins. Here they are on their wedding day, and 2 days later suffered severe flooding of the house they had worked on so hard. Perhaps because of this, they bought and restored a wreck of a property, the White House, deep in rural Bulgaria. She and her husband Jim are classic exponents of the American can-do philosophy. Trisha is a dab hand with a concrete mixer. They have now sold that house and are living in a flat in Sofia. Jim is an accomplished bass guitarist, now running a 3-man band playing Jimi Hendrix music. Trisha has taken up rock climbing, and now there is every possibility she will crew in a 42-foot yacht crossing the Atlantic next winter. David's cystic fibrosis was an inherited genetic defect passed on from both of us as his parents. We therefore decided against any more natural children. The opportunity arose to adopt a 6-week-old baby Susan, and what a success story that turned out to be. Sue also swam like a fish, played hockey and enjoyed horse riding. Here she is astride a horse at Wheelsby Riding School. Her seat, to use an equine term, is upright and confident, hands down and obviously in control, at least until the day after she passed her driving test, when she swapped hooves for wheels. Trisha had 2 sons, Matthew and David. Matthew graduated from Durham with a law degree. He then switched to business studies and married a beautiful Austrian English teacher named Sylvia. They now live in Linz and themselves have 2 children, Anna and Nicholas, which makes me a great-grandfather. David studied maths at Bristol University, but is now a plumber working in London. We have too many friends to mention, but it would be wrong not to name 3. Erica, Ricky Pollitt, who trained at Central Middlesex Hospital with Jean, and Ron and Jean Cheeseborough. These 3 have given us wise counsel for 56 years. Ron and I are now widowers who regularly holiday together. We are both fascinated by all matters to do with the sea and are off again in June aboard the Trinity House flagship Patricia. Did I do enough to satisfy my parents' efforts and sacrifice? I very much hope so, but I was brought up never to boast. However, I'm going to break the habit of a lifetime and tell you of some successes. On one very satisfying morning, a patient said to me, "Don't die before I do." In 1974, I joined the management team of Grimsby Health Authority. 6 of us, responsible for the provision of services to the people of Grimsby, with a budget of millions. I went to see Tony Crosland, our MP and Foreign Secretary at the time, to tell him of our need for the new hospital, which had been talked about for 50 years. The chairman of Humberside Area Health Authority had described parts of our old hospital as Dickensian. I suggested to him that I could perhaps organise a protest march round and round Parliament Square, holding up the traffic. He said, "Go ahead." "Yes," said I, "but I should expect you to lead the parade." We got our hospital. On another occasion, I did some research into the funding of district health authorities in England. All I did was to look up the numbers in the public library. But I discovered that some authorities, usually close to big cities and teaching hospitals, received up to 3 times as much money per patient as those out in the sticks. Not surprisingly, this resulted in much improved mortality rates. I got a paper printed in the Practitioner, a national GP magazine, which was picked up in Whitehall. To her eternal credit, Barbara Castle set up the Resource Allocation Working Party, which 6 months later produced a complicated algebraical formula for a fair distribution of the money, similar to the one which had been in use in education for 70 years. When I die, you may find RAWP engraved on my heart. In 1979, 2 local clergymen, Julian Dunn and Michael Thorpe, wrote to GPs in Grimsby looking for medical input with a view to setting up a hospice. At the time I was struggling, without much success, to look after a patient dying from pancreatic cancer. We met several times in my dining room in the park, convened a meeting of local bigwigs to promote the idea, and wheedled a room from social services to open a day centre on Sunday mornings. We provided lunch from remaindered food from Sainsbury's and M&S. There were occupation activities of various kinds, but much more importantly, counselling for both patients and relatives. Later we bought a large property at Scartho for £45,000, installed a lift and converted it into a 4-bedroom inpatient unit. Later still we moved to our present site, where we have 8 beds for adults and a children's unit. Our turnover is 2.5 million annually, all of it raised from the local community. Marvellous, and a very large part of the credit should go to Ian Davey, our chairman, an accountant who changed our amateur setup into a fully professional charity. Charity, like mercy, blesses both the giver and the receiver, and I count myself lucky to have been involved with St Andrews from the very beginning. In the autumn of 2005, Jean developed baffling symptoms, which were eventually found to be due to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, an aggressive form of lymph cancer. Sue and Vince had arranged a 3-week celebratory holiday in South Africa, which had to be postponed until December 2006 because of chemotherapy. The 3-month course was miserable for Jean, but greatly helped by the sheer caring professionalism of the nurses in our oncology unit. Of course, all her lovely hair fell out, but gradually regrew to an attractive crew cut style. In December 2006, our delayed South Africa celebration went ahead, brilliantly organised by Sue and Vince. They had even arranged the bridal suite at Victoria Falls Hotel. In March 2007, Jean's symptoms returned, and this time there was no response to chemo. With typical courage and in my presence, Jean asked, "How long have I got?" 3 months was the reply. Gradually she went downhill And 3 to 4 days before she died, Jean said to me, "Don't let them make me stay alive." I passed this heartbreaking request on to our GP, and he and the wonderful Macmillan nurses ensured that her passing was peaceful, pain-free, and that she could remain at home. At 4:15 a.m. on the 6th of July 2007, my lovely wife of 52 years died. I miss her like hell. Regrets? Not many, but one is that digital photography came too late to record the early years of my marriage and family. Snap away, back up your precious photos somewhere away from your desktop, and when you're old, enjoy the memories they will conjure up. Thanks, Jim, for composing this video. I look at this picture of the two of us several times a day. It makes me smile. Which reminds me, a bit of advice. If you see somebody without a smile, give them one of yours. Cheers, Harry. Marvellous.
I dream of Jeannie with the light brown hair, born like a zephyr on the summer air. I see her tripping where the bright streams play. Happy are the days as the dance on her way. Many were the wild notes her merry voice would pour. Many were the wild birds that warbled them o'er. I dream of Jeannie with the light brown hair, floating like a zephyr on the warm summer air. I sigh for Jeannie with the gay dawn smile, radiant in gladness, warm with winning guile. I hear her melodies like joys gone by, sighing round my heart o'er the fond hopes that die, sighing like the night wind and sobbing like the rain, waiting for the last one that comes not again. I sigh for Jeannie with the light brown hair.